How are you doing?
Okay, so that was about the notification about the recording of the meeting.
Yes. It's been very nice. I've been looking forward to this day, but in fact, I'm very, very excited to meet you today.
No, likewise, Mahmoud, and thank you so much for the invitation to have this conversation, and in general for your interest, in the topic of forests and forest education and so on. So that is, of course, very much appreciated.
I love everything about forests. I love everything about the environment. I love everything about nature. And so, I mean, when it comes to issues of forests, nature, I was born in a village and I was raised in a village. So I love everything about the environment. So, in fact, I have always wanted to speak to people like you to get an insight on what is happening across the world. So I'm happy. Thank you for that.
And likewise, Mahmoud, of course. First of all, I must say, actually, then our biographies are quite similar, because also I grew up in a small village in the in the mountains in Austria, the country in which I live, and the forests were always close by, and I spent, I would say, half of my childhood actually in the forest, strolling the forests surrounding my parents' house. So yeah, that I think left also a strong impression on me, and ultimately also influenced, my career path, the path that I chose professionally.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. Alex, our interview is going to be very brief, and I would want us to look at the forest education. For instance, we know in the past that, even school garden, here in Ghana, school garden was very common in our schools. But now we don't have some of these things in schools. People don't value it. In the past, you see students the school has its own garden from primary to JSS and even at the secondary school level.
But Mahmoud, that is great. I mean, of course, it's a pity if it doesn't exist any longer. But really, I mean, this is a great example. There are only very few examples, I believe, around the globe where school children do have the opportunity to directly learn about forests and the trees and the school gardens. That's, of course, and the environment more broadly. That sounds like a really great way of doing things, actually.
Unfortunately, we don't have them anymore. So, I mean, the next generation is going to suffer for this. So when I saw the forest education conference, I saw it a day before the event. So I was so lucky. I was so lucky that I didn't miss it. It would have been, I would have been sad if I had not joined that conference. But
yeah, no, great that you were able to join it, Mahmoud, and really, I mean, it was quite a struggle, I must tell you, because UFRO and also our partner organizations, the FAO and also the ITTO, we have been actually calling for a long time for organizing a big international conference on this topic. And it has been difficult, I must tell you. When you approach, potential funders for such activities, they normally would say, forest education is a means towards an end. But we can mobilize resources for the, challenges such as climate change or food security and other things. But oftentimes, they fail to understand that, that forest education is really key to achieving, these broader developmental and environmental objectives, so that it's really necessary to also make an investment into forest education to raise awareness about the importance of forests and trees, starting with the little ones, and then, throughout all the various levels of education. It has been a struggle, but we ultimately managed to mobilize some resources and to then, have this project. The conference was part of a project, and the conference itself, I think you saw it. I mean, it really, there was a very good spirit. It almost created kind of a global momentum for the topic, but now we need to somehow capture that momentum, which is not a small task. So
I saw a lot of people across the world, and that was the exciting moment. I mean, seeing people from other parts of the world sharing their stories. What really brought about this conference? At what point did we realize that we needed to organize a conference like that to achieve our aim?
I believe that, the fundamental recognition is that, if we want to manage our forest resources sustainably, if we want to conserve our forests and trees, we need to have the skills and knowledge to be able to do so. So that is really, forest education is really the foundation for sustainable forest management, and more broadly also for achieving, broader objectives, improving the livelihoods of people, managing our landscapes in a more sustainable and integrated way. So that's the starting point of all this. My own organization, we do have, our members are around about 650, forest research and education institutions around the globe. And from these organizations, we had quite a bit of anecdotal evidence that actually what the universities deliver in terms of, through the curriculum, in terms of skills and qualifications, does not always match the requirements in the workplace. That is one aspect. Another aspect is that in some parts of the world, it's increasingly difficult to attract, young, talented people to the forest sector to pursue careers in forestry and related, disciplines. And thirdly, what we also see in many parts of the world is that the profession itself is changing. The job descriptions of the future might be quite different from actually what they look like at the moment. Nowadays in Europe, for example, and in other parts of the world, the issue of urban forestry is getting a lot of momentum. So how can forests and trees in urban environments improve the lives of people living in the cities, for example? And then, of course, more broadly speaking, the conservation of forests and trees is gaining more and more importance as compared to more traditional, harvesting and utilization of forests and trees and so on. So we had this anecdotal evidence that things are changing and that interest in forests and trees is decreasing. But we didn't know for sure, and that prompted both a global forest education project and the conference. As part of this project, we carried out together with the FAO and ITTO this very comprehensive survey across all regions of the world to really find out what the status of forest education is in the different parts of the world. And that again was then the basis for this conference. What we now have is a much better understanding really of these kind of fundamental challenges that need to be addressed.
With the issue of the fact that it's becoming difficult to attract young men to go into forest education.
And women. Men and women, Mahmoud.
Okay, men and women, sorry. So what has been the challenge? What have you, I know you have been researching on why these young men and women do not want to go into forest education. What has been their challenge? What are they telling you? What is, scaring them away from this particular sector?
I believe what one of the main findings of the survey has been that really there is a problem with the perception of the forest sector and the career opportunities in the forest sector. So for young people, it seems to be more desirable to pursue careers in other sectors other than the forest-based sector. So ultimately, it's a communication challenge. So that was really one of the conclusions that, we need to become more efficient and more professional also in communicating about forests and trees and, all the career opportunities that exist in the sector. And, that these are really very fulfilling, jobs to work with the forests and trees and the people. So that's a communication challenge. And then I think one of the reasons why actually that challenge exists is, and you have already mentioned it, that the younger one, the school children, primary and secondary education, already there, there is insufficient, education about forests and trees, insufficient knowledge also oftentimes on the side of the teachers who just don't know very much about forests and trees. So, and insufficient exposure really to the practice of forestry and to forests and trees per se. You mentioned the school gardens. Similar experiences exist from other parts of the world. Finland, for example, where every school has an assigned piece of forest land where the pupils can come and see, how the trees grow, and how, different interventions in the forest can, lead the forest to develop in different directions and so on. So that, I think that is the problem, that, there's a lack of raising awareness about forests already through the various, levels of education, starting with the youngest ones.
Thank you so much for this clarification. And then let's look at the fact that, in the past, we know our great-great-grandparents were not educated and they were able to manage the forest very well than what we are doing now. So what actually have we not learned from them? Because, in fact, if we want to introduce this in our educational system and we look at back how our great-grandparents were managing the environment, you realize that they were far better managers than we are today. So what have we not learned from them, or what actually is missing in this particular generation that we cannot manage our forests?
Yeah, Mahmoud, I think you're making another very important point. In fact, that was another very important finding of this global survey, that, curricula, university curricula, but already in the schools, really take into insufficient account all the knowledge, the traditional knowledge, the local knowledge that is out there, that already exists. In many parts of the world, the formal knowledge that is being taught at universities and so on, is actually has not changed that much. It's kind of, it has evolved from some parts of the world historically. If you look at, Europe and so on, which then kind of, very much influenced forest education in many other parts of the world. So these curricula have developed using a relatively limited set of types of knowledge, but the local knowledge that is so important for being able to manage the forest and the trees well in a given local context has insufficiently been included into the curricula and into the formal education systems. So that is one of the very clear, conclusions also of the conference, that, we need to include traditional and local forms of knowledge much more effectively into for forest education systems.
Okay, so let's look at the curriculum and how this, is going to be implemented forest education, going back to the old system. I think this happened in the past. No, they were not in a classroom, but they're actually educated on how to manage the forest. So what are we considering, and how is it going to be implemented across the country? I would love to see Ghana implementing this from the primary, even from the KG, the young boys and girls, and to the university. How are we going to implement this? And how is it going to look, the standard curriculum for this particular forest education we are talking about? Have you considered some factors to be able to implement it?
Yeah, Mahmoud, the truth is really, this is now actually the homework that needs to be done. And that, of course, is not a small challenge. But, as a concrete follow-up to the conference, the collaborative partnership on forests, which is a partnership of the 15 leading international organizations and agencies around the world with a global mandate to work on forest issues. This collaborative partnership on forest has launched a new global initiative on forest education. And this new initiative on global forest education aims to tackle the problem, in various respects. For one, there's sometimes quite a detachment between, for example, forest policies and the government institutions in a country and the reality of forest education. That is oftentimes the case also in Africa, for instance. So one of the challenges will be to improve forest policies and government policies in support of forest education. And of course, that requires, collaboration with governments around the globe, including governments in Africa. And this is, for example, where the FAO can make a real strong contribution. The other dimension is that, we also need to work with the education institutions themselves. And as I've mentioned, 𝗙FRO, our membership consists mainly of the universities. So this is where 𝗙FRO can provide a platform, to work with the universities towards improving their curricula. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all approach that would suit every university around the globe, but there are some core pieces of a curriculum that that's what the experts say should be, taught in all parts of the world, and these then need to be complemented, by different, local types of knowledge and so on. And what 𝗙FRO can do is to provide a platform for developing these kind of core curricula and for, and facilitating discussions with educational institutions that can help them improve their own curricula. And the third dimension is the vocational training, to really, lifelong learning of practitioners and so on. And that is where the other partner, the International Tropical Timber Organization, comes into the picture. They have already launched, for example, an online learning course on legal and sustainable supply chains. And one of the concrete roles that 𝗙FRO also intends to play is to enhance online access to educational resources of all sorts. Because that's one thing we see is there is a lot out there. There are many good examples, but they cannot be accessed very easily. So what we launched at this conference was a prototype, we call it the Forestra, a prototype of an online platform which provides access to learning resources, educational resources from all around the globe. And our hope is that in the next month, we can mobilize the resources to develop this in a full-fledged, this prototype in a full-fledged online platform that will do just that, enable access to educational resources. And our hope is that already that will be a big step forward. But of course, that is what the three organizations can do. And now we are committed to mobilizing the necessary resources. But of course, it cannot stop there. This is really a global challenge.
Okay, so are we bringing indigenous people on board? Have we considered bringing those people on board to probably?
Yes, so absolutely, Mahmoud. Another activity in this new joint initiative that I mentioned before is also to involve the indigenous peoples, the local communities, to really find ways and means and protocols, perhaps, of making sure that these local traditional types of knowledge will be better integrated into educational systems and curricula. That will be another important, activity in this new initiative. Okay. What I want to mention, nevertheless, because at this conference you were there, we also launched this call to action, and this call to action really that builds on the realization that, of course, 𝗙FRO, the FAO, ITTO, we can, get a certain, we can do certain things, but of course, this will clearly not be sufficient. So what we really need is this kind of global momentum to really raise awareness of governments around the globe, mobilize those who do have best practices that can be shared, and so on and so forth. And that is why we launched this call to action. And therefore, it's also important, to be able to reach out to, to the media, like you, to really also raise awareness about this general need. This must penetrate all, spheres of society, so that we can jointly really raise awareness at just how important it is to have good knowledge about the forests and the trees.
Okay, so do we have timelines? For instance, when to start the implementation? What you expect in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years after the implementation?
Yes. So the good news is that this joint initiative of this collaborative partnership on forest, this global kind of forest partnership, has just been launched. In fact, last week at the meeting of this partnership with a work plan for 4 years. So it will run until 2025. And that is the time we have to really, bring about, implement the actions that we want to implement, and develop partnerships with other organizations and so on. So that is the timeline we have. Having said that, the thing still is that we have succeeded in already mobilizing some some basic resources need to be raised, and that is the challenge that we are facing at the moment.
So before I ask you my final question, let's look at the global forest reserves we have. Have we disappointed nature?
I would say yes. my personal, that's my personal answer, and it's not a very scientific answer, but it's obvious that the way in which we are managing our forest resources, and more broadly speaking, the way we manage and utilize our land, is not very effective and not very clever, and there would be better ways of doing so. And because what we are really seeing is that that we are exploiting our resources to an extent where they cannot recover very easily anymore, with all the implications for the livelihood of people. Whenever we talk about the forest, of course, we also talk about people, the many people who depend on forest resources directly or indirectly. The good news is that, there we know about better ways of doing things. And that's also a role of the scientific community. And that is, really also our mission is to provide, policymakers, decision makers with the information about how to utilize our resources in a better, in a more efficient way, and to protect our forests and trees more effectively in the future.
All right, thank you so much. Your final words?
Yeah, no, for example, I mean, just to give you an example, the vast majority of wood on the African continent is being used for energetic purposes. And that, of course, is an enormous pressure on the forests and the trees. And this is something where we are working also. It shows also the need to work with other sectors such as energy in order to find, effective ways of reducing, that pressure on our forest resources for basically burning the wood.
Yeah.
While forestry is such an important role in other respects, in creating income, for local communities and so on. And one of the approach that scientists from Africa also always recommend is to manage our landscapes in a more integrated manner, really looking at the needs of the people, whether it's the water that is needed, whether it's the food security that is the #1 priority. So it's this kind of, really direct interactions with the local communities to optimize, the ways in which we use our forests and trees.
So, in fact, I forgot this thing. How about Ghana? Have you considered Ghana in any of these programs?
Well, first of all, Mahmoud, of course, I mean, we are very proud as 𝗙FRO to have several member organizations from Ghana as member organizations of 𝗙FRO. So the CSIR Forest Research Institute of Ghana is, of course, a member organization of 𝗕𝗂𝗰𝘁𝗄𝗏 University of Science and Technology. I did not pronounce it properly. Is a member organization.
That's what I do. I'm pursuing my MPhil in climate science. So
yes, this is your alma mater, exactly. Yes, so that is a member organization of 𝗙FRO, and we do have scientists who are very actively involved, in the science collaboration in 𝗙FRO. For example, one of the scientists from that university, from 𝗕𝗂𝗰𝘁𝗄𝗏, is a deputy coordinator of a 𝗙FRO division dealing with forest policy and economics, so a very important division. And our member organizations, they play a very active role in the science collaboration. And so that is what I can say. So Ghana really, I would say, among the African countries, Ghana is one of the most active ones in terms of scientists and scientific institutions participating in international science activities. So that is a very positive aspect, I would say. Of course, I mean, there are limitations, as we all know, and especially also the past year has been very challenging with COVID and all this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alexander. And then your message to Ghanaians, your final words. Actually, I think you haven't shared your final words with me.
The final word really would be going back to our topic, forest education. Really, take your kids out into the forest, about the importance of the forest and trees. And as you suggested, Mahmoud, also ask the grandparents, about what they know about the forest and trees, and also take their knowledge serious and try to keep it, to remember it, and to pass it on. That would be my message to the audience.
All right. Thank you so much. And then I mean, you know, Ghana, we don't have many science journalists. Those that we have actually from different fields, they just have to fit themselves in. And this has been a very great challenge here in Ghana. I mean, that's why when it comes to forests and other stuff, reporting of such people, you have only few people, I mean, reporting, and you don't have most of them even joining some of these conferences. We're trying to see, we have a group, and in fact, actually brought some people together that we want to train them and see how they can talk more on science and other stuff. And, you know, I'm sure you have read about the state of forests in Ghana here and how our forest reserve is being depleted because of mining and other stuff. I'm so happy that I've gotten you today. I'm very, very excited, and I would share your story with my colleagues and let them know how we can also help to spread this message in Ghana.
But Mahmoud, in general, I mean, because really I very much appreciate your interest in the topic and the fact that you want to cover it. Of course, I mean, you know, 𝗙FRO, I am not a scientist, but in the 𝗙FRO network is really made up of scientists on a whole range of topics, including from Africa. So whenever, you know, you feel that you want to cover a story that requires really that expert knowledge, then the 𝗙FRO network is a good, you know, way of finding those people who could then be more qualified interview partners than I will ever be. So please never hesitate to get in touch with me if you know ever a story comes up and you feel you would like to find a good interview partner, for instance. Having said that, one thing that I can, a bit of marketing also from my side, because this Friday actually evening, so in 2 days, we are going to launch a regional policy brief on poverty alleviation, forest and poverty alleviation in Africa. It is a follow-up to a global study we did some time ago. It will be formally launched this Friday. And if you allow me, I will send you the information. It will be a virtual event. If you find the time on Friday,
I will join. I think
perhaps
I've registered for it. Your secretary sent me the link, so I've registered. I will part.
Excellent. So you have it already. Okay, perfect.
I was privileged to have received that message from him. I was like, hey, then Mahmoud is now moving a step ahead of others.
So we need to make sure that you are on our mailing list so that you receive this type of information also in the future. So absolutely.
Sure. Can I have your contact, maybe WhatsApp contact, that I can always reach you, maybe if I need more clarification on the story?
I will, yes. So I think you put, yes, Mahmoud, of course. So I think you put your number in your in the email, and I will just, you know, send you my number to that number so that we are connected also through the WhatsApp.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. All right.
No, likewise. Thank you really so much for this opportunity. And greetings to Ghana. Unfortunately, I've personally never been to Ghana, so I sincerely hope that soon I will have the opportunity to also come to Ghana.
We're very much happy to see you in Ghana.
Thank you so much, Mahmoud.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And have a great remaining day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.